Tonight, I'm breaking down the Bigfoot encounter pattern, and I'm going to walk through 5 specific things that consistently show up in these encounters. Number 1, the sudden silence in the woods. Number 2, the feeling of being watched. Number 3, the sounds people hear. Number 4, the visual encounter itself. And number 5, what this pattern might actually mean. So I'm going to go through these each one by one with real details and real examples. Because when you start comparing these encounters from completely different people and completely different locations, they all describe the same sequence. And once you hear these sequences enough, it stops sounding random and starts looking more like a pattern. Welcome to the Deep Woods Paranormal Podcast, where we make the paranormal normal. I'm Matt. I've been investigating the unknown for over 30 years, including Bigfoot activity right here in Texas and California and other states. And tonight, this isn't about proving anything. It's about understanding what people are actually experiencing and why it keeps happening the same way. So again, topic number 1, the silence. The environment suddenly shuts down before the encounter begins. Number 2, the feeling of being watched. A strong, immediate sense that something is observing you. Topic number 3, the sounds. Audible activity begins without visual confirmation. Number 4, the sighting. Visual confirmation is usually brief and incomplete. Number 5, the pattern and what it means. The sequence repeats consistently across encounters. All right, so let's break this down. Going back to topic number 1, the silence. So, establishing normal forest conditions here. Forests are never really silent. There's consistent baseline noise, including insects. Sometimes there's wind movement in the leaves and the branches. Sometimes there's small animals moving around through the brush. And even at night, there's always some kind of background noise. Number 2, what witnesses specifically report. So silence happens suddenly, not gradually. All ambient sounds stop at once. The insects stop, the bird stops, the movement stops, and the silence lasts longer than normal pauses. Number 3, we'll look at Joe's camp for an example. The piney forest environment, not naturally loud at night. Reports of full sounds and then instant silence. No transition period. This stands out because the baseline noise level is high in this area. Number 4, comparison to natural causes. Predators' presence can quiet an area temporarily, but it does not eliminate all sound. It also doesn't last as long, and it doesn't feel total. And topic point number 5, effect on the person. So immediate awareness, something has changed. People stop moving or talking. Attention shifts to the surroundings instantly. So let's take a look at all this, guys. This is quite a bit of stuff. All right. So yeah, the forests are usually pretty loud. You usually hear crickets and birds and stuff like that, even at night. I've been out there from, in the daytime, nighttime. It's not quite as loud in the night, but there's some kind of like ambient background noise, like a white noise that's consistently going out there. There's always noise. And when a Bigfoot encounter happens, especially for me, when the whole forest just goes quiet, or at least the area I'm in goes quiet, that to me kind of makes my ears perk up, my eyes open a little wider, maybe the hair in the back of my neck goes up, and I'm starting to think, okay, something's out there. And I don't always think Bigfoot first. First thing I'm looking for is, okay, maybe there's, because in my area, we do have bears, very rarely, but we do have bears. We have mountain lions. We do have wolves, again, not very normal, but we do come across them every once in a while. And then there's other predators like coyotes and stuff like that. And then, stuff like that. But anytime I've run across these things, I mean, I've had deer walk right past me. I was in the forest in the middle of the night, scared the living bejesus out of me. What the hell? It just walked right past me. But I turn and look, and there's a deer walking like 5 or 6 feet right next to me, and it looks at me and goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Wasn't expecting to see you here. So yeah, I mean, but then it doesn't go completely quiet. There's always, like out here, especially when we go into the areas where there's freshwater creeks and stuff like that, and waterways. There's frogs, there's toads, there's all kinds of other noise. And then there's also, you get what are they called? The insects. I can't think of the name of them right now, but they're extremely loud, and they're like a cricket. Anyways, so yeah, all that stops. Everything goes quiet. And I've had so many encounters now, I've lost track. But there's just no noise. Everything just stops in the forest. And then you start to hear what sounds like maybe something moving around, something big moving around. Sometimes you'll hear them walking. Sometimes you'll maybe see eye shine through the camera. You're starting to scan around with the camera if you have a camera with you, a night vision camera. And you're just standing there, you're going, what in the world? And your senses are like on high alert. You're like, there's something going on here, but I can't tell what it is. And so you're like, I know there's something going on, but I can't see anything. I can't hear anything. Everything's just completely quiet. And so you're trying to figure out what's going on, but there's nothing there. There's just nothing and nobody. And until they do something, until another action is taken, maybe they break a tree branch or they take a footstep, a loud footstep, because Bigfoots can walk without you hearing them. They've got that fatty pad on the bottom of their foot. And for some reason, they can walk. When they take a step, they can walk and absorb a lot of the crunch that you hear with your normal tennis shoes or boots or whatever you wear out in the wild. So, that piney forest environment, especially at Joe's camp, is extremely loud at night. The cicadas, that's what I was looking for. The cicadas, especially during the summer and early fall, man, they are louder than loud. But they go quiet too. They stop. And when all that noise stops and it's almost dead silent, at least in your area, you're looking around, you're going, okay, I know this is a Bigfoot area. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're like, okay, where are they? How close are they? What are they doing? Are they just watching? Or are they going to come grab me? What's going to happen here? And, your senses just go nuts. And you're like, paying attention. But also, like at Joe's camp, when I was over by myself in the cemetery that night, I was feeling like, holy crap. The feeling of being watched was extremely high. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I was in danger. And so, like I said in one of my other podcasts, I thank God was not on foot by myself. I had driven over there in my truck, but I was surrounded by forest. And, it's basically his cemetery area, or was his cemetery area, and the remnants of their old farm over there. And so there was an area that was basically used for growing, and that was just basically grass. But all the way around me, within about 50-yard radius, basically I was in a square, and essentially that area, I could hear things moving around me. I could feel them around me, and I knew they were there. I knew that they were there, and it was like they didn't want me there. So I don't know if they can mess with your senses. I don't know if they can manipulate your brain waves. I don't know if they can do something like that. We've talked about the high strangeness with Bigfoots and how they might be some interdimensional being. So I don't know if they can manipulate your thoughts or put thoughts in your head. Maybe they can put fear in your head. I just don't know. But I definitely didn't feel comfortable that night. So that said, anyways, predators, when they come into an area, Yes, they're hunting, they're doing whatever. Usually doesn't go completely quiet. Usually there's an attack, you'll hear an animal die, and then basically everything comes back. But the difference is that like Bigfoot areas, when they're in an area, it goes completely quiet for however long they're there. For some reason, they other animals just don't. They stop. They stop. Making noise probably for fear of giving away their location. I imagine frogs and birds and crickets, maybe even, could be a really big thing for Bigfoot. If I'm hungry and basically my food is in the forest, I'm going to eat bugs. I'm going to eat birds. I'm going to eat frogs. I'm going to eat fish. I'm going to eat whatever. So I imagine that's probably why everything goes quiet. Maybe they know that they're being hunted. So we kind of talked about the effects on a person, the immediate where something has changed. Like I was talking about, feeling like a feeling of fear and the hairs on the back of my neck going up and basically stopping and feeling like you're being watched, and then basically kind of being more aware of your surroundings. If you're in a group, maybe one or two people pick up on it and they're like, shh, 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 shh. Hey, there's something going on. Sometimes some people pick up on it, some people don't. Um, your attention shifts to the surrounding area, looking around to see what's going on. Maybe you don't think it's a Bigfoot, but maybe you're like, okay, there's something out there. And maybe you hear like a crunch. And so that draws your attention to wherever you heard the noise. And you're trying to figure out, maybe you have a flashlight. Maybe you're shining a flashlight out into that area to see what's going on, right? Or something. Or maybe you have a camera. If you're doing Bigfoot research, maybe you have a camera and you're not shining a light out there. You're shining, your camera IR light out there. Anyways, so the silence acts as a first trigger that something is different. Something is different in the environment. Excuse me. We kind of talked about the feeling of being watched. This is topic number 2. There's a strong, immediate sense that something is observing you. The consistent descriptions from witnesses is that I wasn't feeling like I was alone. Something was watching me, and that I need to leave immediately. That all happened to me in that graveyard that night. It's happened to me at Black Star Canyon, where, after my really close encounter that I've talked about, the last encounter I ever had where I had a sighting where I was like a foot away from that Bigfoot. After that, my senses were always extremely high. When I was walking through there, I knew they were standing right behind the bush next to me. I could feel them, and you could kind of see their outlines. And we all knew each other was there. I mean, they were using the brush as cover so that I wouldn't understand that they were there. And then, the sudden onset, the intense and focused feeling of just the being watched and feeling like it's coming from a specific location. Like I knew it was coming from behind the bush. At Joe's camp, when I was up at the cemetery, it felt like they were all around me. I felt like I was surrounded. And so literally I went and stood against my truck so that if they came down, and I didn't think they would, and they didn't, but it felt like they were going to come down from the trees behind me. So that's why I put the truck behind me and literally ended up getting into the truck and filming from inside the vehicle, because I just did not feel like I was safe, essentially. Physical responses, adrenaline spikes, that definitely happened to me, increase in heart rate, the heightened awareness, the urge to turn around and scan surroundings. Again, all that happened to me. So I felt like I shouldn't be there and ended up leaving. So that's definitely something that I experienced. At Joe's camp, individual sitting quiet, just sitting observing. Feeling starts before the any sound or movement. It's often directed towards the tree line or deeper in the woods. I can't tell you how many times we sat at Joe's table and literally the Bigfoots would come down to us, and we were, if you've ever seen the Joe's camp video I'll have to link it in the description down below on audio and video podcasts on our YouTube channel and Rumble channel. We were just sharing that on the podcast last night with Snow White. Anyways, literally, they were literally feet away from us. I mean, they were coming down to the trees, literally right in front of us. And if you had night vision technology like we did, we had cameras that could see them, and night vision binoculars, and a few other pieces of gear that we could see their eye shine. You could see them blink and stuff, and that's all recorded on camera. Okay, so field reports. Camper wakes up at night. Before hearing anything, they feel presence outside the tent. Remain still due to awareness. So number 5, supporting example. So camper wakes up at night. Before they hear anything, they feel a presence outside their tent. They remain still due to awareness of something nearby. And now that also happened to me. I camped at Joe's camp. I camped out in the upper middle part of his camp. I had trail cams out everywhere the first night, and I didn't experience anything. So I went through and took a lot of the cameras back down because I wanted them to come in and feel like they could come in and explore and see what I was doing. I wanted to have an experience. So I took the cameras down, and so they could feel more comfortable. And I don't think I ever really fell asleep that night. I was asleep for short periods of time, and then awake and asleep and awake, and constantly listening. I had my hearing aids in because I wanted to make sure I could hear, and had my glasses on so I could basically see if something happened. And it was freezing cold. I mean, we got back from basically doing our investigation, and it got really cold that night. It was supposed to get down to the 40s and 50s, and I think by the time I went to bed, it was 18 degrees. And so I was in jeans, a full jacket, hoodie, and beanie and all that stuff. And I could see my breath. I think it got down to like 15 that night. I didn't have the right sleeping bag, so I didn't sleep very well. And it was cold all night. I had a heater that didn't work. So, anyways, all that stuff happened to me. And so I was awake and awake, asleep. And sure enough, while I was still awake, I felt I was facing away from the back of the tent. So I had my cot set up against the wall of the tent. And essentially I had myself set up about 6 inches away from it. And so it would hang down without me touching it. And sure enough, I felt a hand reach in from the tent, push the tent in, and actually touch me. It touched my back. Something touched my back. And it freaked me out. I didn't move. I just lay there. I'm sure if I had a camera facing me, my face would have probably just gone, scared as hell. And I was like, oh my God. And as soon as it touched me, it let go. And I know it wasn't one of the dogs, because Joe doesn't let dogs out. I know it wasn't Joe messing with me. But so yeah, I essentially had that encounter. And then I got up to go use the restrooms about 3 or 4 hours later, which I was not very comfortable doing. I unzipped the tent and I hear this god-awful. It wasn't a whoop. It was deeper than a whoop. It was more like a woo. It was like something was almost like an alarm. Like something was sounding alarm. It only lasted about 4 or 5 seconds. By the time I ran back into the tent, I just unzipped the tent and walked out. And that's when it happened. I had to run back into the tent, grab the camera, turn it on, and by the time I got it back on, it stopped. They were definitely watching what I was doing. But anyways, that was my experience. So natural explanations. You go into human survival instinct. Your subconscious detects detection of movement or presence. Your awareness goes up. So, I mean, unless you actually see one, I mean, there all kinds of stuff can make all kinds of noises out there. So, I mean, there's just, there's basically a lot of alternate explanations. It's like I always say, and I don't expect anyone to believe until they've had an encounter where they can say, it couldn't be anything else but a Bigfoot. So with Joe's camp, I can tell you it was a Bigfoot because I've experienced them so many times up there. I mean, I've had probably 30 or 40 sightings up there during the day and night, and other people too. I mean, I've taken multiple people up there. If you don't know, Joe has unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago. But anyways, the alternate explanations, perception of being observed, and suggests awareness of whatever's present. Again, that goes back into number 6. It's not a general fear. It's specifically target awareness response, essentially. That basically is your brain saying, hey, alert, alert, alert. There's something going on out there, and I need to be paying attention to what's going on and be aware. So if I need to, I can fight or flight, right? All right, so let's go into topic number 3. The audible activity begins without visual confirmation. So the types of sounds that are reported, of course, tree knocks, loud, sharp wood-on-wood sounds. They're not random branch noise. They're not like something just like a branch snapped and fell off of a tree. It's more like a bang, 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 like somebody shooting a gun, right? So sometimes reported or spaced out. So like at Joe's camp, we used to hear, a response. You hear bang, like a real loud bang. And you're like, okay, that's not gunfire. And I'd verify with Joe, and his neighbors know that's not gunfire. And then you'd hear another one a few seconds later, but it's coming from a different area. And then you hear another one coming from another area. And sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's more. And then you hear this like a bird call. And it sounded really weird. It didn't sound like a bird, but it was a bird making a noise. And then, that would come from the other edge of his property. And then you might hear another one come from the other side of his property. So that would basically get you, your brain going, okay, something's out there, something's going on, we're being watched or whatever. It definitely comes from different locations. Other noises people hear. Footsteps, heavy, slow, and deliberate. Not light or erratic like small animals, and it definitely indicates weight and size. So, like when we had our first encounter at Black Star, that first ever encounter, like I was telling Snow White last night on her podcast, it was when we first saw it, it was just standing in the clearing and then basically walked behind that tree. And it probably took 2 or 3 steps to get over there. It was not a small distance to cover, but it made no noise. And it walked through deadfall. I mean, it literally walked through deadfall. I know because I went over there to measure the tree a couple days later after we had an encounter. And then basically when it got mad, when I said, hey, doesn't it know we can still see it? And of course, it's towering 3 or 4 feet above the top of a 10-foot tree. It stomped off. And when it stomped off, I mean, literally, it shook the ground. It felt like an earthquake. Boom, 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 boom. And of course, it went over and started breaking tree branches and growling and going off, which to me actually was exciting because this is my first encounter, my actual first visual encounter with a Bigfoot. And I was just goo and like, oh my gosh, they're real. So other people were like, holy crap, should we run? What do we do? They're asking me what we do. But anyways, so other noises, I just talked about branches breaking. So thick branches snapping. This requires force, especially if they're very large tree branches. Not small brush movement. Essentially, like a tree, not just a tree branch, but sometimes tree trunks are snapped. I mean, we've been at Joe's camp a couple times where we've heard snap, crunch, and just way louder than I'm telling you now. just, you hear a tree trunk being snapped off, or you hear them breaking something, and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they doing out there? It sounds like a bulldozer's going through the forest. It's loud. Other things that happen, maybe if you get too close, or they're not comfortable with you being there, or maybe they're hunting, who knows what they're doing. Rocks landing near your feet, which is what happened with our first encounter. Basically, rocks are being thrown at the girl's feet, which is what caused me to walk over to the berm and look out there with my little light and have my first encounter. That also happened a couple other times when we were standing in the middle of the road, talking. Rocks are being just little pebbles, little tiny pebbles, maybe the size of pennies or a little bit bigger, or playfully being tossed at our feet. And so, stupidly, I picked up a rock and threw it back into that area, and then it stopped. But they were just throwing rocks at our feet. It was almost playful, to be honest with you. I don't think they were trying to scare us away or anything. I think it was more like, juveniles just having fun. Rocks, basically, I've had rocks come flying off the top of a hill and hit two eucalyptus trees. Basically, it hit so hard, the one eucalyptus tree, they were right next to each other. And it hit one tree and then ricocheted off, hit the other tree, ricocheted back off, hit the other tree, ricocheted back off, and fell. And it was loud, and it was not a small rock. This thing probably was, I don't know, the size of, it was bigger than a volleyball. It was huge. It was a huge rock. It was probably a 50, 60-pound rock. And whatever threw it, threw it on the dead line, 40, 50 feet on a straight line, hit that tree. And that was crazy. I'll never forget that ever happening. Other things that happened, when we were at Black Star Canyon, it was almost like somebody shot at us. This little pebble comes flying across a whole canyon area, and literally the closest tree was about 40, 50 yards away, and this thing came straight on the line over and hit this girl's backpack as I watched it hit it and fall. And I was like, holy crap, where the hell did that come from? And I looked at where it came from, and I was like, whoa, that came all the way across that field. There's no tree line around, and we couldn't see anything. We didn't see anything. So for somebody to throw a rock, it's about the size of a pea or a little bit bigger, more like a penny size, that far on a line, sign them up for the Dodgers, right? Or the Rangers or the Astros, because that person, man, they have an arm. They have a cannon for an arm. But that was crazy. And I've seen it at Joe's camp. They've thrown rocks at Joe's camp a few times. I heard it hit a couple of times. They threw rocks, they threw mud clots, and they threw pine cones. In fact, we got actually a rock. Joe was able to go out there with a Ziploc bag, turn it inside out, and basically pick it up with an actual hair sample and possibly skin sample on it, and put it inside the Ziploc bag and saved it for me. I still have that rock. We have not gotten the hair tested yet, but it was interesting that they did that. Let's see. So other patterns of sound behavior. A lot of the time it kind of begins at a distance. Maybe you hear a howl or a scream, maybe a whoop, and then suddenly it kind of starts to move closer to you, and then it suddenly stops, and again the forest goes completely quiet. Scary stuff. When that happens, you're like, okay, that's not human, that's not an animal, what is that? And you're thinking to yourself, you're like, what just did that? So sometimes it's tree knocks late at night. We would hear the tree knocks, and then we would do tree knocks back, and then they would get a little closer, the tree knock would come a little closer. In fact, I had one night, actually happened to me twice, one at night, one during the day, but this time I was just taking down a trap cam because it wasn't in the place I wanted to leave it. It was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We had a whole night where they had responded. We'd done tree knocks and they responded. We did screams and they responded. Tree knocks, they responded. And literally this came from feet from me, and I hear this tree knock. I'm like, what? I'm looking around, and I didn't have anything but a flashlight in my hand. Unfortunately, I just put my camera down, and I'm looking around. I'm going, what in the world? Where did that come from? and it sounds like it was just feet from me. And I started laughing. I said, "You're awesome. Thank you. And I appreciate that." And but I never did see anything or hear anything after that. We actually left a couple minutes after that. And unfortunately, everybody was it was already in the car ready to go. But it also happened during the day to me. I was over in his bamboo area, and in the front of his bamboo area, where the front of his camp is, there's the road, and there's a huge area, maybe 4 or 5 feet wide, where the bamboo has literally been snapped off 4 or 5 feet thick at the base, all the way up there. So there's a whole walking area, right? Game area where basically something could easily walk through into there and out of there. And of course, you walk in there and there's a structure with bamboo kind of snapped off and leaning up against each other in teepees and other forms. And I didn't see the writing on the ground in this area, but I was over there with a GoPro and I actually documented it. I got it on camera. So if you guys watch the second Joe's Camp video, the documentary we did a couple years later from the first one, you'll see if you see when I walk in there, it happens like feet from me. Anyways, so movement around the camp and perimeter, we definitely had that. We had night vision. We had night sightings of them coming in real close to the camp, circling the location. Definitely happened. They were very curious about what we were doing, I think, almost as curious as we were about them. And then interaction behavior, we kind of talked about this. The sounds appear to get attention, establish presence, and influence movement. Whether they want to drive you out of there or not, I don't think they saw us as a threat. I also think they didn't see us as interfering with what they were doing. So they interacted with us as long as we were kind to them. They were kind to us. We were always extremely patient, and we were also very courteous to them, and we respected their boundaries. We never pushed into their areas, and when we did, they kind of let us know they didn't like it. But other key observations: sounds occur without visual confirmation. This suggests presence without exposure. So this happens a lot. All right. So topic 4, sightings. Visual confirmation is usually brief and incomplete. Nature of sightings. Rarely full body, clear views, partial figures, movement between trees, shadow-like shapes. Again, if you go back to Black Star Canyon, we used to see Bigfoots essentially are shadowy figures that were too big for shadow people. You're talking 10 plus feet tall, step over the barbed wire fence and go across the road, 40, 50 feet ahead of us, step back over the barbed wire fence and disappear on some trees. And that was pretty normal for us out there to see them moving around. The movement between trees, yes. We could tell as we were moving into the canyon, they would use the trees as cover. You could see them, you could see silhouettes of them kind of sometimes. You could see partial body parts if you had thermal or night vision and you were able to penetrate the foliage. You could actually kind of see them a little bit. You might see a leg or an arm or maybe partial head or whatever. Definitely shadow-like shapes. That's very normal. Common visual characteristics: very large, usually upright. Not all the time. Sometimes they're on all four. Sometimes they go down on their bellies. Usual height estimates: juveniles, 7 to 9 feet tall. Broad shoulders, dark or shadowy like appearance. If you're lucky enough, maybe you get a flashlight on them, or you get a infrared camera or some kind of infrared technology, or even a thermal of them, and you can actually see what they are. They look like a very large person, essentially, or a very large ape moving around in the woods. Eye shine. This is probably the most common. A lot of people report seeing either green, red, or yellow eyes reflecting back at them. If you go back to Joe's camp, we saw this a lot. We never visually saw it, but we definitely saw on the camera. We could see it. Usually And I've seen this actually with my own eyes, just not at Joe's camp. I've seen it in the other forests, especially at Black Star, a couple of times. Often it's the first visual details, and they basically appear stationary or briefly moving. So essentially, they come down and they look to see who you are or what you are. Maybe they think you're a deer. Maybe they think you're a prey item, and they go, "Oh, no, no, that's not dinner. I'm out of here." So they take off. Movement behavior, it's usually very smooth and very controlled. They're very quiet, like I was saying. They have very soft feet pads, supposedly, and it's very easy for them to walk around and absorb that foliage that they step on. Maybe if their feet are relaxed, that padding on the bottom of their foot allows them to not make a bunch of noise. I don't know. This is my thinking, my theory. They can definitely move very quickly between cover. Again, Joe's camp, we've seen them, definitely standing behind trees. They disappear immediately as soon as you shine a light on them, or you try and get a camera on them. They'll close their eyes, but you can kind of still see a silhouette. They turn sideways behind the tree, and most of Joe's trees were 2+ feet wide, anyways. So even a large bipedal animal like that could basically turn sideways, and you wouldn't be able to see them. They could still cover. Or they went down on all fours and got behind some foliage, or they basically went on their stomachs and belly crawled out of there. And there was always usually a lot of them around. There wasn't just one or two, there was quite a few. So essentially they were able to essentially come into an area and basically hunker down really quick and disappear. And there's usually multiples. There wasn't just one or two. You could hear them all around us. There was like a family group of them. But usually there's no follow-up visual after that. There's no footprints left. There's no sign of them. They are very quick, and they can get out of there pretty quick. Supporting file type examples. Witnesses see upper body, head of shoulders. The height is clearly above a human size, and the animal retreats behind trees or brush very quickly. Usually they always have something in between you and them, and these things seem to know exactly how to get out of there very quickly, or disappear, which means they either lay down on their stomach or they basically go on all fours, or if they are, high strangeness, maybe they just go through a portal. I don't know. But anyways, key limitations. The sightings provide confirmation of a presence, but it's not a clear identification, especially if it's just all they're seeing is a black outline, like a shadowy kind of entity. It's very hard to say, that for sure was a Bigfoot, even though you're out in the middle of the woods and there's nobody around for miles or even maybe hundreds of miles. It's very hard to say that couldn't have been a person, but it's really strange for somebody that's 8 to 10 feet tall to be out in the wilderness following you through the woods, and there's no vehicles around or anything else like that. So anyways, in conclusion, visual encounters are usually brief. They're very controlled and limited in detail. It usually happens within like 2 to 3 seconds. Somebody has their oh my gosh moment, there's something out there. Maybe then they hear something. Maybe they hear a tree branch snap. Maybe they hear a tree knock. Maybe they hear a whoop, a scream, a howl, whatever. And then, they kind of figure out where the animal is. They look at it, and maybe they catch some eye shine, or they catch a silhouette behind a tree or something. They catch movement, and then it's gone. So, anyways. Let's talk about the pattern and what it means. The sequence repeats consistently across encounters, like we talked about. Definitely sequence is clear. You have the silence, then you have the feeling, the sound, and the sightings. They're consistent across cases. If you look through hundreds of cases like I have, there's different locations, not just Texas, but other regions, other states. You look at California, Oregon, Washington, Arkansas. I could go through it. Louisiana, Oklahoma. I mean, almost every state Alaska. They all have different encounters, but a lot of the things all start the same. And if you go through all these cases, there's thousands of cases, hundreds of thousands of cases out there. And if you look back through all of them, you can basically take all five of those things I talked about, which is the silence, the feeling, the sound, and then the sightings. Those four things usually happen with almost every single encounter. Not everyone, but almost everyone. So behavioral interpretation, the possibility that it's animal behavior, territorial warning system, the explanation of patterns, the presence is detected, the warning signals happen, and then limited exposure. Let's talk about the behavioral interpretation of this. Possibility one, it's animal behavior. It's a territorial warning. The presence is detected, the warning signals are sent out, and then there's limited exposure, possibly to drive somebody away. Possibility two, it could be intelligent behavior. There's a controlled interaction. It's controlling the interaction, watching to see how the human is aware of its presence, and basically it avoids being full exposure, so that somebody can't say for sure that was a Bigfoot. They just know they heard something, they saw something, they felt something. They heard a tree knock, they heard some branches broken, they may have saw some eyes shine, they might have seen an outline, of a person or something very large in the woods, but they can't say for sure 100% it was a Bigfoot. And a lot of skeptics will use that to say, oh, well, that's not a Bigfoot encounter, and maybe it wasn't. I don't know, I can't say yes or no. It's basically based on each person's encounters. You really have to go through and really identify, is that a real encounter or was that a misinterpretation? So, Joe's camp pattern consistency, a lot of the times, Joe's camp was loud. There was always noise around. There's deer, there's raccoons, there's possums, there's rabbits, there's squirrels, there's all kinds of stuff going on at his property. Of course, he lives right in the middle of the forest. And to have that silence happen, and the cicadas and the crickets and the frogs and everything just stop, and for it to go completely quiet, it's eerie, guys. It's really eerie. And then there's then you start to hear sounds. You're aware of sounds going on around you that don't sound normal, and then you have that visual encounter, which are rare but consistent with the sequence. Anyways, so these events are not random. They occur in repeatable structures. It seems to be like every time you listen to a case, they all follow that same sequence. And when you step back and look at all five of these stages together, the silence, the feeling, the sound, the sighting, and the pattern behind it, it becomes a lot harder to explain this away as a random experience. These encounters basically follow a structure, and that structure shows up again and again across different people, different locations, and different situations. So the question is, what are these people really encountering out in the woods? Is this an unknown animal showing territorial behavior? Or is it something intelligent that's aware of us? Or something that we just don't fully understand yet? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. And I understand some people are skeptic, and I love you guys. I love my skeptics because you guys make me think. And you really make me check and make sure that everything is what it's supposed to be. Anyways, so have you ever experienced this pattern? Did it follow the same steps for you guys? Please feel free to comment down below. Guys, please keep it nice. Don't go at each other. This is an open forum. It's supposed to be a safe place for people to talk and share their experiences and stuff like that. So I really appreciate it if you just be kind to each other. If you haven't experienced Bigfoot, that's awesome. If you have, that's awesome too. But be respectful of each other. And like I said, if you've had an encounter, I'd like to hear about it. So this is Deep Woods Paranormal, and we're making the paranormal normal. And again, I will catch you guys on the next one.